The night was wrapped in velvet darkness, and the elegant restaurant shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers. Soft music played, the clinking of glasses blended with laughter, and every table was set with white linens that gleamed under the golden glow of the lamps. But in the midst of this luxury, a young black waitress named Aaliyah Hayes carried the weight of a life that had never known ease. She moved quietly, pouring water, arranging plates, and forcing a polite smile that hid the pain of unpaid bills and endless struggles. Her heart beat with the ache of someone who had lost more than she could bear. Aaliyah's father, Jamal Hayes, had been everything to her guide, her protector, her hero. But years ago, he had passed away under tragic circumstances that left her mother broken and their family drowning in debt. Since then, Aaliyah had worked day and night to survive. Each glass she polished, each plate she carried, was a step further from the dreams she once had of finishing college and living a life of dignity. Tonight, she expected nothing different. Just another long shift serving wealthy strangers who barely noticed her. But she had no idea that fate was about to open a chapter she thought was forever closed. Sparkles. Before we go further into this emotional journey, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in stories that remind us of humanity's hidden beauty, please take a moment to like this video, share it with your friends, comment your thoughts, like where you're watching from and what time it is, and subscribe to our channel, Kindness Thread. Your support helps us keep telling stories that touch hearts. Aaliyah weaved through the crowd, her black uniform hugging her frame just tight enough to remind her she wasn't one of them. At 23, she should have been cramming for finals or chasing internships, not balancing trays loaded with overpriced appetizers. But life had a way of flipping the script. She flashed a practiced smile at table 7, a group of suited execs too busy name-dropping to notice her as she refilled their water glasses. "Anything else for y'all right now?" she asked, her voice smooth as silk, even though her feet screamed from the cheap heels she'd scored at a thrift store. One guy glanced up, barely registering her face. "Nah, we're good, sweetheart." Sweetheart? She bit back the urge to roll her eyes. Instead, she nodded and slipped away, her mind already drifting to the stack of bills waiting at home. Rent was due in 3 days, and the electric company had sent another pink slip. Mom's disability checks barely covered the basics, and Aaliyah's tips? They were the thin thread holding it all together. She ducked into the kitchen for a breather, the sizzle of steaks and shouts from the line cooks hitting her like a wall. Leaning against the cool metal counter, she rubbed her temples, fighting the knot in her chest. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Back in high school, she'd been the girl with straight A's and a full ride to Howard University on the horizon. Dreams of becoming a lawyer, fighting for folks like her family in the courts. But then Dad happened, or rather, didn't happen anymore. Jamal Hayes. Just thinking his name sent a pang through her gut, sharp as a knife. He'd been the rock, the guy who could fix anything with a wrench and a grin. Grew up in the projects but hustled his way into a small business, partnering with some hot shot to build something real. "Baby girl," he'd say, ruffling her hair, "you gotta dream big but work twice as hard. World ain't fair, but you can make it bend." He taught her to ride a bike in the cracked parking lot behind their apartment, cheered loudest at her debate team wins, and slipped her extra allowance for those late-night study sessions. Then 5 years ago, it all crumbled. The partnership went south. Some shady deal, whispers of betrayal, and Dad's world imploded. The business tanked, debts piled up like snow in a blizzard, and the stress ate him alive. Heart attack at 48. Gone in a flash, leaving Mom shattered and Aaliyah to pick up the pieces. No life insurance, no savings. Just a mountain of bills and a funeral that wiped out what little they had. Aaliyah blinked hard, shoving the memory down. No time for tears in this gig. She grabbed a fresh tray of bread baskets and pushed back out into the dining room. The air smelled of garlic butter and expensive cologne, a far cry from the microwave dinners waiting at home. Table 12 waved her over, a couple dripping in jewelry, the woman fiddling with a diamond the size of a grape. "Miss, this Chardonnay is room temp. Fix it," the guy barked, not even looking up from his phone. "Right away, sir," Aaliyah replied, scooping up the glass without missing a beat. Inside, she seethed. Room temp? Try living without AC in July because the bill's overdue. But she kept it locked down, that fire in her belly. Tips paid the rent, not attitude. As she headed to the bar, she caught her reflection in a mirrored wall. Curly hair pulled into a tight bun, makeup flawless to hide the dark circles. She looked the part, but felt like an imposter in this world of excess. Back at the hostess stand, her co-worker Mia leaned in, whispering over the hum of the crowd. "Girl, you okay? You look like you're carrying the weight of the world." Aaliyah forced a chuckle, low and real. "Just the usual grind. Mom's check bounced again. Landlord's breathing down our necks." Mia's eyes softened. "Damn, that's rough. Have you ever thought about going back to school? You're too smart for this crap." "With what money?" Aaliyah shot back, her voice edged with that familiar bitterness. "Scholarships dried up when I dropped out." "Nah, this is it for now. One foot in front of the other." Mia squeezed her arm. "Hang in there. Something's got to give." "Yeah, right." Aaliyah nodded and dove back into the fray. She cleared plates from table 4, where a family celebrated some kid's graduation. Balloons, cheers, the works. The dad beamed at his daughter, slipping her a card that probably held a fat check. Aaliyah's throat tightened. That could have been her and Jamal. He was in a suit, toasting her future. Instead, she was here, invisible, scraping by. As the night wore on, the crowd thinned a bit, but the energy stayed electric. Aaliyah's shift was halfway done, her tips jar filling slowly. She paused by the window, staring out at the city lights twinkling like false promises. Home was a cramped 2-bedroom in a neighborhood where sirens were the lullaby. Mom spent days in bed, depression wrapping her like a blanket, leaving Aaliyah to handle everything. The groceries, the calls from collectors, the fake cheer to keep spirits up. "Dad, if you were here," she muttered under her breath, tracing a finger along the glass. But wishes were for kids, and she wasn't one anymore. She straightened up, plastered on that smile again, and turned back to the room. Another table needed water, another fake grin, another step in the endless hustle. By closing time, her legs ached like she'd run a marathon, but the haul wasn't bad enough to cover the electric bill. Maybe splurge on real coffee instead of the instant stuff. She cashed out, waving goodbye to the crew, and stepped into the cool night air. The walk to the bus stop was quiet, her mind replaying the evening's faces, the laughs, the luxury, the life she glimpsed but couldn't touch. Unlocking the apartment door, she found Mom asleep on the couch. TV flickering with infomercials. A stack of envelopes sat unopened on the table. More red ink, more demands. Aaliyah sighed, dropping her bag and sinking into a chair. She pulled out an old photo from her wallet. Her, Mom, and Dad at a barbecue, grins wide under the summer sun. "Miss you, Pops," she whispered, her voice cracking just a little. Tomorrow would be another shift, another battle. But deep down, in that quiet ache, Aaliyah held onto a sliver of hope. Life had kicked her down, but she wasn't out yet. Not by a long shot. The clock on the kitchen wall ticked past 8, and Le Chateau was hitting its primetime stride. Aaliyah Hayes wiped down a tray, her muscles still humming from the early rush. But she pushed through. Tips didn't wait for tired feet. The place thrummed with that upscale vibe. Waitstaff gliding like shadows, patrons flashing credit cards that could buy her whole life twice over. She caught a whiff of seared foie gras from the pass, her stomach growling despite the staff meal she'd scarfed earlier. A bland pasta that tasted like cardboard. "Keep it moving, girl," she muttered to herself, slinging the tray over her shoulder and stepping back into the fray. Table 9 flagged her down first, a boisterous group of tech bros toasting some startup win. "Another round of IPAs, hon," one called, his tie loosened like he'd conquered Wall Street. Aaliyah nodded, jotting it on her pad. "Coming right up. You guys celebrating?" She kept it light, fishing for that extra buck in the tip jar. The leader grinned, all teeth and ego. "Hell yeah, just closed a Series A, $1 million baby." She forced a congrats, her mind flashing to her own stalled dreams. $1 million? That'd wipe her slate clean, and then some. But she swallowed the envy, delivered the beers with flair, and pocketed the chit-chat. As she turned, her gaze snagged on the corner booth, tucked away like it was meant for secrets. The guy sitting there stood out without trying. Silver hair slicked back, navy suit sharp as a blade, exuding that quiet power that screamed old money, or new money built on cutthroat deals. He wasn't chatting up anyone, just nursing a scotch, eyes glued to a leather-bound folder spread out before him. Aaliyah hovered nearby, topping off waters at adjacent tables, stealing glances. Who was this dude? Looked like he could buy the restaurant and turn it into a parking lot on a whim. His fingers traced lines on the pages. Blueprints, maybe? Diagrams that screamed big business. No ring on his finger, no company to share the glow. Just him, isolated in his bubble of success. She felt a weird pull, like spotting a storm cloud on a clear day. Focus, Aaliyah, she chided internally, but curiosity nipped at her heels. Mia sidled up during a lull, nudging her elbow. You see Mr. Mysterious over there? Been here an hour, barely touched his steak. Tips like a king, though. Last time he was in, dropped a Benjamin on a coffee. Aaliyah arched a brow, keeping her voice low. For real? What's his deal? Looks like he's plotting world domination. Alexander Grant, Mia whispered, like saying it too loud might summon him. Big shot CEO. Built some tech empire from nothing. Apps, AI, you name it. Forbes list regular. But word is he's a lone wolf. No family, no drama, just stacks on stacks. Aaliyah's interest peaked, a flicker of something deeper stirring. Lone wolf? She knew that vibe all too well, hustling solo since Dad checked out. But this guy, he had the world at his feet, yet sat there like the weight of it was crushing him. She watched as he flipped a page, his jaw tightening, lost in whatever ghosts those documents held. The contrast hit her like a gut punch, her scraping by on ramen and bus fares, him probably flying private jets. What kind of life left a man like that, staring into papers instead of living it up? She shook it off, diving back into orders. Table 15 needed refills. A family of 4, the kids glued to iPads while parents scrolled phones. More bread? She offered, sliding the basket over. The mom looked up, distracted. Sure, thanks. This place is something, huh? Yeah, it's got that wow factor, Aaliyah replied, her smile genuine for a beat. But inside, the irony burned. Wow factor for them. Grind for her. As she cleared empties, her path looped closer to Grant's booth. Up close, his presence was electric. Posture straight as a board, eyes sharp like they could cut glass. He glanced up once, their gazes brushing for a split second. No nod, no smile. Just a flicker of acknowledgement before he dove back into his folder. Her heart skipped, unexplained. Why did he feel familiar? Like a puzzle piece from a box she'd long tossed. She busied herself with silverware, but thoughts raced. What secrets hid in that empire of his? Rumors Mia dropped painted him as a self-made titan, clawing up from humble beginnings. But success like that? It came with skeletons, betrayals maybe, cut corners that left folks in the dust. Aaliyah knew that story. Dad's partnership had imploded the same way. Whispers of foul play that no one ever proved. Grant sipped his scotch, the ice clinking softly. From her vantage, she caught snippets, sketches of circuits, flow charts, signatures scrawled at the bottom. Business as usual for a mogul. But his face, etched with lines that spoke of regrets, not just wins. He rubbed his temple, a rare crack in the armor, like the past was nipping at his heels. Aaliyah felt a pang. Empathy? Nah, couldn't be. Guys like him didn't need pity. Yet here he was, alone in a sea of revelry, his solitude screaming louder than any toast. The night ramped up, orders flying like confetti. Aaliyah hustled, dodging a spilled wine here, charming a complaint there. Sorry about the wait. Kitchen's slamming tonight, she told a cranky couple, diffusing with that southern charm she'd picked up from Dad's Georgia roots. They softened, and she scored a solid tip, but her eyes kept drifting to the corner. Grant hadn't budged, his focus laser sharp on those pages. What drove a man to build an empire just to haunt it alone? Power? Greed? Or something buried deeper, like guilt that wouldn't quit? Mia caught her staring during cleanup. Girl, you zoning on him? Careful, He's got that vibe like he could eat souls for breakfast. Aaliyah laughed it off, light and easy. Nah, just wondering how the other half lives. Must be nice. No worries except which yacht to buy. But as she wiped down the bar, the question lingered. In this glittering den of excess, two worlds brushed shoulders, her grind and his throne. Little did she know, fate was gearing up to smash them together. For now, though, it was just another shift, another stranger in the mix. She pocketed her tips, the bills crisp against her palm, and clocked the clock. Almost time to bounce back to reality. But that corner booth, it tugged at her, a quiet promise of chaos on the horizon. The hum in Le Chateau cranked up as the dinner crowd peaked, laughter ricocheting off the walls like ping-pong balls. Aaliyah Hayes zigzagged through the maze of tables, her tray balanced like a pro, dodging elbows and egos. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the AC blasting. Another hour into the shift, and her calves burned from the constant hustle. "Order up for 11, the expediter barked from the kitchen pass, but she waved him off. Her section was slamming, and the corner booth needed a refill stat. She grabbed the water pitcher, ice clinking softly, and zeroed in on Mr. Mysterious, Alexander Grant, as Mia had spilled. He sat there like a statue, folder open, pen hovering over pages that screamed high-stakes deals. Up close, the guy radiated that untouchable aura, the kind that made folks whisper and steer clear. Aaliyah approached with her game face on, polite but detached. "Evening, sir. Mind if I top you off?" she asked, voice steady, even as her mind raced through the tip calculus. Big shots like him could make or break her night. Grant glanced up, his steel gray eyes flicking over her like she was part of the decor. "Sure," he muttered, barely audible over the jazz riff. He shifted the folder slightly, but not enough to hide the sprawl of documents. Blueprints sketched in precise lines, flowcharts branching like veins, and at the bottom of one page, a signature, bold and slanted. Aaliyah tilted the pitcher, water streaming into his glass with a gentle gurgle. Her gaze drifted down, casual at first, then snagged hard. That handwriting, the loops on the J, the sharp cross on the H, familiar as her own reflection. Her breath hitched, the pitcher wobbling in her grip. No way. She blinked, leaning in a fraction, heart pounding like a bass drop. It was Dad's. Jamal Hayes, scrawled right there in black ink, like a ghost jumping off the page. Memories crashed in, him signing her report cards with that flourish, doodling on napkins during family dinners, sealing envelopes with letters full of advice. "Work smart, baby girl, not just hard," he'd say, pen flying. The glass nearly overflowed before she yanked back, water sloshing onto the linen. "Oh, shoot, sorry," she stammered, grabbing a napkin to dab it up. But her eyes locked on that signature, certainty slamming her like a truck. How? Why here, on this stranger's papers? Her hands trembled, the napkin crumpling in her fist. Questions exploded in her head. Dad's old business stuff? The partnership that tanked everything? She'd heard scraps from Mom, vague tales of betrayal. But this? It yanked the scab off old wounds, raw and bleeding. Grant noticed her freeze, his brow furrowing. "Everything all right?" His tone sharpened, that CEO edge cutting through. Aaliyah's mouth went dry, words bubbling up unbidden. She pointed a shaky finger at the page, voice dropping to a whisper that sliced the air between them. "That's my dad's signature. Right there. Jamal Hayes." The name hung heavy, her chest tightening like a vice. Saying it out loud made it real, dredging up the ache she'd buried deep. The funeral, the empty chair at holidays, the way Mom's laugh had died with him. Grant's head snapped up, eyes narrowing as he followed her finger. For a beat, the restaurant noise faded to a distant buzz, the chandelier's glow narrowing to a spotlight on them. His face drained of color, pale as the tablecloth, and his hand, the one gripping the glass, started to shake. Subtle at first, then violent, like a seizure hitting. The Scotch tumbler slipped from his fingers, crashing onto the table with a sharp crack. Amber liquid splashed everywhere, soaking the documents, ice cubes skittering across the wood. "Damn it," he hissed, but his voice cracked. eyes glued to the signature now blurring under the spill. Jamal Hayes. The name hit him like a freight train, yanking him back decades. Flashbacks hammered. Young and hungry, he and Jamal in a dingy office, hashing out ideas over cold pizza. "We got this, Alex," Jamal had grinned, slapping his back. "Partners in crime, building from scratch, apps that revolutionized logistics, deals that stacked cash." But then the greed crept in, misunderstandings snowballing into accusations. A shady investor, whispers of embezzlement. Grant had pointed fingers, desperate to save his skin. "It wasn't me," he'd sworn, but the evidence he'd twisted sealed Jamal's fate. Company bankruptcy, Jamal out on his ass, reputation torched. Grant's gut twisted, bile rising. He'd buried it all, convinced himself it was survival of the fittest, built his empire on those ruins, jets and boardrooms, erasing the guilt. But now, this girl, Jamal's spitting image in those fierce eyes, standing here, dredging it up. She worked tables while he sipped $1,000 scotch. The injustice slammed him, his breath ragged. Hands fumbling, he mopped at the spill with his napkin, but his mind reeled. Jamal's death. He'd heard through the grapevine, a heart attack from the stress. Stress Grant had piled on. God, what have I done? The thought clawed at him, vulnerability cracking his iron facade. Aaliyah stepped back, pulse racing, her own napkin forgotten. The crash drew stares from nearby tables, whispers rippling like wildfire. "You okay, sir?" she asked, but her voice trembled, laced with confusion and that old simmering hurt. The unfairness burned. Dad gone, family broke, while this guy sat pretty, but the look on his face, recognition, regret, it mirrored her pain, twisting the knife deeper. Grant met her eyes, his usual composure shattered, voice low and rough. "Jamal, your dad?" It wasn't a question. It was a confession bubbling up. The past wasn't dead. It was staring him down, demanding reckoning. Aaliyah nodded, throat tight, the weight of years crashing down. The restaurant spun around them, but in that bubble, the air crackled with unspoken truths. She clutched the pitcher like a lifeline, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The din of Le Chateau turned to a low roar in Aaliyah's ears, forks scraping plates and murmurs, blending into white noise. She stood frozen, pitcher still clutched, white-knuckled, as Alexander Grant's question hung between them like a live wire. "Jamal? Your dad?" His voice cracked on the name, eyes wide with a mix of shock and something darker. Guilt. Recognition hit her harder than the spilled scotch soaking into the tablecloth. This wasn't some random coincidence. This guy knew Dad, knew him enough to pale like he'd seen a ghost. Rage bubbled up from her gut, hot and unchecked, overriding the confusion. "Yeah, my dad," she snapped, her whisper turning sharp, drawing a couple of glances from nearby tables. "The one you screwed over? The partner you threw under the bus?" Words flew out before she could reel them in, fueled by years of Mom's late-night stories. Vague hints of backstabbing in that old business deal. Aaliyah's chest heaved, the uniform suddenly too tight, her polite server mask shattering. "What the hell is his signature doing on your fancy papers? You steal that too?" Grant recoiled like she'd slapped him, his chair scraping back an inch. "Whoa, hold on, it's not like that," he stammered, hands up in surrender, but his face betrayed him, creased with lines that screamed busted. The spill forgotten, he leaned forward, voice dropping low. "I knew Jamal. We were partners, yeah. Built the foundation of my company together. But things went south. Misunderstandings, bad calls. I never meant to." "Bullshit." Aaliyah's voice cracked louder, echoing off the chandeliers, heads turning full on now. Table 10's couple paused mid-bite, eyes wide. The tech bros at 9 craned their necks like it was primetime drama. She didn't care, let them stare. This was her shot at answers, at justice for the man who'd been ripped away. "Misunderstandings? You mean like framing him for whatever crap tanked the business? Mom said you pointed fingers, let him take the fall while you walked away with the empire. He died because of that stress, you know. Heart gave out from fighting your lies." The words landed like punches, Grant flinching with each one. His silver hair caught the light, but his composure was crumbling, shoulders slumping under the navy suit. Sweat beaded on his forehead and he glanced around, aware of the growing audience. Waitstaff hovering, Mia shooting her a what the hell look from the bar. But he didn't bolt. Instead, he met her fire with a haunted stare. Kid, you don't know the half of it. Sit down, please. Tell me about him. About you. What happened after? Aaliyah hesitated, fury warring with the raw need to unload. Sit? With this snake? But his plea hit a nerve, that crack in his voice sounding almost human. She slammed the pitcher down on a side table, ignoring the slosh, and pulled up a chair from an empty spot nearby. Screw protocol. Her manager could fire her later. The restaurant buzz picked up, whispers buzzing like bees. What's going on over there? Is that Grant, the billionaire? She ignored it all, leaning in close, her dark eyes boring into his. Why? So you can twist it like you did back then? Fine. You want to hear? Mom cried herself to sleep every night after the funeral. Bills piled up, medical, lawyers, the house we lost 'cause your misunderstandings left us broke. Grant nodded slowly, urging her on, his scotch-stained napkin twisted in his fists. Aaliyah's voice shook, but she powered through, the dam breaking. We moved to that crappy apartment in the hood, roaches and all. I dropped out of college, full ride to Howard, poof, 'cause someone had to pay the rent. Worked doubles here, smiling through the BS while rich folks like you ignore us. Dad taught me integrity, hustle, said we'd make it together. But you built your throne on his grave. Jets, mansions, while we scrape by on food stamps. Each detail sliced into Grant like shards, his face twisting in real-time agony. He rubbed his jaw, memories flooding back. Jamal's laugh in that startup garage, high fives over first profits. Then the fallout, the investor scam, evidence he'd manipulated to pin on Jamal, saving his own ass. I thought I was protecting the company, he'd told himself for years, but hearing it from her lips. It gutted him. His empire, boardrooms, billions, felt hollow, built on a friend's ruin. Tears pricked his eyes unbidden, and he blinked them back hard. Jesus, I didn't know about the aftermath. Jamal was my brother back then. We dreamed big together. Aaliyah scoffed, crossing her arms tight to hide the tremble. Brother? Brothers don't stab each other in the back. You got rich, we got nothing. Mom's health tanked. Depression, pills just to get through the day. I wake up every morning wondering what if? What if you hadn't sold him out? Her voice rose again, drawing more stares, a server pausing mid-stride with a tray. The air crackled, tension thick as fog, patrons shifting uncomfortably, but glued to the show. Grant leaned in, voice raw and pleading. It wasn't that simple. There was pressure, investors breathing down our necks. I made choices I regret every damn day. But hearing this, it's killing me. Tell me more. How'd you end up here slinging plates? She glared, but the words kept spilling, a catharsis she didn't know she needed. Scholarships, gone when I deferred too long. Dreams of law school, buried under shifts like this. Nights I cry in the bathroom stall, then plaster on a smile for tips. Dad would have hated it, hated seeing his girl reduced to this, while guys like you thrive. The accusation hung, heavy and final, her breath coming short. Grant's head dropped, the weight crushing him visible, shoulders hunched, eyes glassy. The realization hit like a sledge. His success wasn't clean. It was stained with Jamal's blood, sweat, and now this girl's tears. The restaurant's glamour faded to a backdrop for his shame, whispers turning to outright stares. He opened his mouth, words failing, as the drama peaked in that charged silence. The tension in Le Chateau thickened like smoke, the once buzzing room now a theater with all eyes on the corner booth. Aaliyah Hayes sat rigid, her arms still crossed like a shield, glaring at Alexander Grant as if her stare could burn through his tailored suit. The whispers from surrounding tables grew bolder. Did she say betrayal? That's Alexander Grant, right? The tech mogul? But she tuned them out. her pulse thundering in her ears. Grant's head hung low, his napkin a shredded mess in his lap, the weight of her words pressing him down like an anvil. He lifted his gaze finally, eyes red-rimmed and glassy, the unbreakable CEO facade cracking wide open. "All right," he rasped, voice barely above a gravelly whisper. "You deserve the truth. All of it. No more BS." He swallowed hard, glancing at the soaked documents on the table. Blueprints smeared, that damning signature staring back like an accusation. Jamal and we started from nothing. Garage in Queens, late nights coding apps that changed shipping logistics. He was the brains with the heart. He kept me grounded when I got too cutthroat. We signed that first big deal together, his flourish on the dotted line sealing it. Aaliyah leaned in, her jaw set, but a flicker of curiosity pierced her rage. "Yeah? Then what? You got greedy?" Grant nodded, no dodging now, his hands clenching into fists on the table. Investors piled in, money flowed, but so did the sharks. One deal went sideways, embezzlement from a silent partner. Evidence pointed everywhere, including Jamal. I panicked, twisted the books, planted hints that made it look like he was the fall guy. Told myself it was to save the company, but deep down, it was to save my ass. The board voted him out, and bankruptcy hit like a bomb. He walked away with zilch, reputation torched. I kept the IP, rebranded, and boom, Grant Tech was born. The confession spilled out raw, his voice breaking on the edges, tears welling up and spilling over, tracing salty paths down his weathered cheeks. Aaliyah watched, stunned, the billionaire crying, in public. A hush fell over nearby tables, silverware clinking to a stop, phones subtly angled for sneaky pics. "You framed him," she hissed, her own eyes stinging, voice laced with venom. "Ruined his life for your empire, and the stress? It killed him. Heart attack at 48, the docs said it was the constant fight. Lawsuits, debts, shame you heaped on him. Mom found him slumped over the kitchen table, papers scattered everywhere. You did that!" Grant's shoulders shook, a sob escaping despite his clamped jaw. He wiped at his face with the back of his hand, smearing the tears, looking every bit the broken man instead of the titan. "I know," he choked out, the admission gut-wrenching. "Heard about the heart attack through old contacts. Told myself it was a coincidence. Bad luck. But yeah, I own it. My choices broke him, broke your family. I've lived with this ghost for years, nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if I could have stopped it. Jamal deserved better. You deserve better." Aaliyah's breath caught, the fury twisting into something sharper. Pain, betrayal, fresh as a slap. She shoved back from the table, chair legs scraping loudly against the floor, drawing gasps from the crowd. "Deserve? Screw that. You think spilling your guts now fixes it? Mom's on antidepressants, barely gets out of bed. I sling trays in this joint instead of fighting cases in court like Dad dreamed. Your empire? Built on our blood. I don't want your pity tears. Keep 'em." She stood, trembling, ready to bolt, her pride a firewall against the vulnerability cracking her open. The manager hovered at the edge of her vision, face pinched in worry. "Aaliyah, what the hell?" But she ignored him, chest heaving. Grant reached out, hand hovering midair, pleading. "Wait, please, I'm begging you. Forgive me? No, I don't deserve that. But let me make it right. Somehow. Name it." His sincerity hit like a wave, raw and unfiltered. Those tears no act. The mighty Alexander Grant reduced to a wreck, voice cracking like glass under pressure. Aaliyah froze, her escape halted, the fire in her gut flickering. Part of her wanted to spit in his face, walk out with her head high. But another part, the one that remembered Dad's lessons on second chances, on seeing the human in the monster, stirred. His eyes, locked on hers, mirrored her pain, a shared grief bridging the chasm. "Why now?" she whispered, voice softening against her will, sinking back into the chair. "After all this time?" Grant exhaled shakily, wiping his face again, the restaurant's hum resuming in fits and starts around them. "Because seeing you, it's like Jamal's right here calling me out. I've got everything. jets, penthouses. But it's empty, hollow. Your story? It rips me apart. Let me hear more, please. Aaliyah hesitated, the wall crumbling brick by brick. She sat fully, the emotional pull too strong to ignore, tears slipping down her own cheeks now. Fine, but don't think this changes anything. Yet as she spoke, detailing the foreclosure notices, the food bank runs, the nights she cried herself to sleep, their shared vulnerability wove a fragile thread. Grant listened, nodding through his sobs, the moment stretching into something profound, two souls colliding in the wreckage of the past. The onlookers blurred into the background, the drama peaking in that intimate bubble, accusations yielding to raw connection, pride bending under the weight of truth. The air in Le Chateau hung heavy with the aftermath, the murmurs from gawking patrons fading as the manager finally stepped in, herding folks back to their meals with forced cheer. Aaliyah Hayes wiped her cheeks roughly, the salt from her tears mixing with the sweat of the shift, her heart still racing from the emotional gut punch. Alexander Grant sat across from her, his suit rumpled now, eyes puffy but steady, like a man who'd hit rock bottom and decided to claw his way up. I can't undo the past, he said, voice low and gravelly. But I can damn well try to fix the now. Give me a chance to prove it. Aaliyah crossed her arms tighter, pride flaring like a match in the dark. Prove it? With what? Your checkbook. That's easy for you. Throw money at the mess you made. But her words lacked the earlier bite, curiosity edging in. The vulnerability in his plea tugged at her, reminding her of Dad's old saying, real strength shows in the fix, not the fight. She glanced at Mia across the room, who shot her a wide-eyed nod. Go for it, girl. Fine. She'd hear him out, but on her terms. Grant nodded, pulling out his phone with steady hands. No grand gestures. He kept it low-key, tapping away as the restaurant's hum resumed around them. First things first, he muttered, more to himself. Over the next few minutes, he laid it out plain. No fluff, no sales pitch. A full-ride scholarship to Howard, wired directly to admissions, covering tuition, books, and even a stipend for living. You dropped out to hustle? Not anymore. Pick up where you left off. Law school track, like Jamal always pushed. Aaliyah's breath caught, her mind flashing to dusty textbooks stacked in her closet, dreams she'd shoved aside for survival. You serious? Just like that? Skepticism laced her tone, but hope flickered, warm and unbidden. Grant didn't blink. Dead serious. And for your mom, debt's cleared. Medical, rent arrears, all of it. I'll have my team handle the paperwork quietly. No strings, no spotlight. She leaned back, processing the offer like a bomb about to detonate. Pride screamed, no, handouts from the enemy. But logic whispered yes. This could lift Mom out of that fog. Give her a shot at breathing easy. Grant kept going, his voice gaining strength. And one more thing, a foundation in Jamal's name. The Jamal Hayes Fund, helping families hit by business fallout, scholarships, legal aid, and startup grants for folks from the blocks like he was. I'll seed it with 10 mil, run it through trustees who get it. The words hit her square, a bridge to Dad's legacy snapping into place. Not just cash, purpose. Jamal had always talked big about giving back, community centers, mentorships for kids in the projects. This, it echoed him, turned his pain into power. Aaliyah's eyes welled up again, but she blinked hard, refusing to break. Why? Guilt trip? Or you think this buys forgiveness? Grant met her gaze head on, no evasion. Guilt? Hell yes, but more than that, Jamal deserved this. I owe him my start. Time to pay it forward. He slid a business card across the table, simple and unassuming. Think on it. Meet me tomorrow, neutral ground, coffee shop on 5th. No pressure. She pocketed the card, fingers lingering on the embossed name, the restaurant's lights reflecting off her nails. Shift over, she clocked out in a daze, Mia pulling her aside in the back. Girl, what just happened? That was straight out of a movie. Aaliyah shrugged, a half smile cracking through. Dunno, but it feels real? The walk home blurred, city lights streaking like tears, her mind replaying his sincerity, the way his hands shook slightly, the crack in his voice. Next morning, the sun slicing through her apartment blinds, Aaliyah stared at the card over instant coffee. Mom stirred in the next room, her cough a reminder of the grind. "Screw it," she muttered, texting the number. Coffee, 10 a.m., sharp. The spot was cozy, tucked away from the hustle. Worn booths, the smell of fresh brew cutting the air. Grant waited, no suit this time. Jeans and a hoodie, looking like any guy nursing regrets. "Glad you came," he said, sliding her a latte without fanfare. They talked, real talk, no barriers. He shared stories of Jamal, late-night brainstorms, barbecues where he'd grill ribs like a pro, the fire in his eyes when pitching ideas. "Your old man saved my bacon more times than I can count. Pushed me to think bigger, fairer." Aaliyah opened up too, halting at first. Dad's jokes that lit up rooms, his bear hugs after tough days, the way he'd blast Motown while cooking Sunday breakfast. Laughter mixed with tears, the shared memories weaving a net that caught her falling doubts. Over the next week, meetings piled up, lunches in parks, calls during her breaks. Grant moved quietly but fast. Scholarship papers arrived via courier. Mom's bills vanished overnight with anonymous wires. "How?" Aaliyah pressed during a walk by the river, wind whipping her curls. He shrugged. "Connections. But it's clean. No tax dodges, no headlines." She tested him, probing for angles, but his answers rang true. Raw honesty about his screw-ups, no excuses. "I was young, dumb, scared, lost sight of what mattered." Bit by bit, the enemy label peeled away. In his eyes, she saw echoes of Dad, the hustle, the heart buried under layers. "You're not the villain I thought," she admitted one afternoon over burgers at a dive joint. "More like a messed up uncle who finally showed up." Grant chuckled, but his eyes misted. "I'll take it. Jamal would have wanted this. You chasing dreams, not chains." The turning point hit during a quiet dinner at a hole-in-the-wall soul food spot, collards steaming, cornbread golden. Grant slid over the foundation docs, Jamal's name bold at the top. "Co-chair? If you want. Shape it your way." Aaliyah traced the letters, throat tight. This wasn't pity. It was partnership, a nod to what Dad built. Forgiveness bloomed slowly, not full absolution, but a path forward. "Yeah," she whispered, voice steady, "for him." As they parted, the city buzzed around them, but inside, hope sparked bright, a bridge forged from ashes, linking past to promise. The campus quad at Howard University buzzed with that back-to-school energy, leaves crunching underfoot as students hustled between classes, backpacks slung low, and laughs echoing off the red brick buildings. Aaliyah Hayes strode through it all, her curls bouncing free under the autumn sun, a syllabus clutched in one hand and a coffee in the other. Real brew, not the watered-down stuff from home. At 24 now, she felt the shift in her bones. No more waitress uniform pinching her sides, no more faking smiles for tips. This was her turf, law books heavy in her bag, dreams firing on all cylinders. She spotted a bench under a massive oak and dropped onto it, flipping open her notebook. Notes from contracts class sprawled across the page, cases on partnerships, irony not lost on her. "Dad would have loved this," she muttered, a grin tugging her lips. Jamal's voice echoed in her head. "Hit 'em with the facts, baby girl. Make 'em bend." The scholarship from Grant had kicked in seamlessly, covering everything down to dorm fees. First semester back, and she was acing it, group studies turning into late-night debates that lit her up inside. No more dodging bill collectors. Mom's place was squared away, debts vaporized like bad dreams. Back home that weekend, Aaliyah pushed open the apartment door, the smell of frying chicken hitting her like a warm hug. Mom stood at the stove, humming an old Aretha tune, her apron dusted with flour. First time in years she'd cooked anything beyond microwave meals. "Hey, Ma," Aaliyah called, dropping her bag by the couch. The place looked different. Fresh paint on the walls, no stack of envelopes glaring from the table. Mom turned, her eyes bright, not dulled by that perpetual fog. "Baby, how's campus? Spill it. Any cute study buddies?" Aaliyah laughed, real and deep, pulling her into a squeeze. Ma, focus. Classes are killer, but I'm owning it. The professor said my paper on equity was fire. They sat at the table, plates loaded with soul food classics, chatting like old times. Mom's laugh lines crinkled deeper now. Therapy sessions paying off. Meds balanced. That man, Grant, he really came through, Mom said softly, fork pausing midair. Cleared the slate. I got a part-time gig at the community center, helping with resumes. Feels good, you know? Like breathing again. Aaliyah nodded, throat tightening. Yeah. Took me a minute to swallow my pride, but it's working. The change hit hard. Mom smiling at strangers on the street, joining a book club, even dating a nice guy from church. No more nights of her sobbing into pillows while Aaliyah held her tight. Grant's quiet moves had flipped the script. Anonymous wires erasing red ink. A counselor hooked up pro bono. It wasn't just cash. It was space to heal, to rebuild from the wreckage Dad's loss left behind. Across town, Alexander Grant paced his penthouse office, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city skyline like a trophy he no longer chased. The Navy suit hung looser now, stress lines softened around his eyes. Board meetings dragged, his mind wandering to the foundation docs on his desk. The Jamal Hayes Fund. Logo bold with Jamal's signature stylized in the curve. 10 mils seeded, his assistant had confirmed weeks back, grants rolling out to families in the trenches, legal aid for small biz owners, scholarships for kids from the blocks. Grant had chaired the first meeting himself. No cameras, just raw stories from folks who'd been screwed like Jamal. He sank into his leather chair, pulling up an email from Aaliyah. Updates on the fund's impact. Her input sharp as a tack. We're making waves, she'd written, attaching pics of a kid from Harlem getting his acceptance letter. Grant's chest swelled, not with ego, but something warmer. Peace, maybe. The cold CEO shell had cracked for good. He skipped the power lunches now, opting for volunteer shifts at the fund's outreach events. Feels like Jamal's got my back again, he confided to his empty office, a half-smile breaking through. Flashed to a fund event downtown, community hall packed with faces from all walks, kids in hoodies, parents with calloused hands. Aaliyah stood at the podium, mic in hand, her voice steady and fierce. This isn't just money, it's legacy. My dad, Jamal Hayes, believed in lifting folks, not stepping on them. Thanks to partners like Alexander Grant, we're turning pain into power. Applause rippled. Grant in the back row clapping hardest, his usual stoic mask replaced by a genuine grin. They locked eyes post-speech, her nod saying it all. We're good. Later, over coffee in a corner booth, echoes of that fateful night. Aaliyah leaned in. You look different. Lighter. Grant chuckled, stirring his black brew. Feel it too. Empire's still there, but it's not everything. Board thinks I'm going soft. Hell, maybe I am. But Jamal? He'd approve. She reached across, squeezing his hand quickly. No awkwardness, just respect. Dad always said forgiveness ain't weak. It's the ultimate flex. Thanks for stepping up. As months rolled by, Aaliyah dove deeper into her path. Internships at legal aid clinics, fighting for underdogs like Dad had dreamed. Mornings jogging campus trails, evenings brainstorming fun ideas with Grant over Zoom. Mom bloomed too, gardening on the balcony, volunteering at shelters, her laugh filling the apartment like music. Grant shed the lone wolf vibe, dinners with old friends, anonymous donations stacking up, his penthouse hosting fun brainstorms instead of deal closings. One crisp evening, Aaliyah stood on a bridge overlooking the river, wind whipping her scarf, reflecting on the whirlwind. Loss had gutted her, but from those ashes rose this: hope reborn, chains broken. Grant's redemption wasn't a fairy tale. It was gritty, earned through sweat and truth. Success? It wasn't stacks or status. It was the lives touched, the forgiveness forged. She smiled wide, genuine and free, the future stretching bright ahead. As the city lights faded into the horizon, Aaliyah poured one last cup of coffee at a local cafe, her smile no longer forced but blooming from a place of renewed hope. Through forgiveness and redemption, what was once a shattered past had transformed into a brighter future, reminding us that true success isn't measured in wealth or power, but in the compassion we extend and the lives we lift along the way. Have you ever faced a betrayal that tested your heart only to find healing through an unexpected act of kindness? Share your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear how compassion has changed your world. Stay tuned for our next tale of unbreakable family bonds and second chances that will warm your soul even more. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share with a friend, and subscribe to Kindness Thread for more heartfelt journeys. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us. See you soon, friends.